All right, look, I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but we need to talk realistically about podcast monetization, and in particular, podcast monetization in the early days of your podcast. It might turn into a rant. I am honestly not sure. It might turn into a rant, but if it does, just bear with me, because you know there's going to be some good stuff at the end of it. Because, of course, that's what I do. I'm Mark Asquith, CEO and co-founder of Rebel Base Media, that British podcast guy, and one of the creators of such wondrous podcasting tools as Podcast Websites, the managed WordPress platform for the independent podcaster looking to build an immense personal brand, and, of course, Productivity, the interaction startup, plus Captivate.fm, the world's only growth-oriented podcast host, where you can get 7 days completely for free. Go and check it out. Find out why people are just loving Captivate and why they are finding it such a massive boost to their podcasting workflow. Please go and check that out, Captivate.fm. And a big thank you to everyone that helps us to shape that platform. We've got some amazing releases coming up this week, as always. Now, we do need to talk about podcast monetization, because in this golden age, quote unquote, in big, massive, quote unquote, air quotes, golden age of podcasting, people are just not setting realistic monetization targets, and it's kind of frustrating. And the reason it's frustrating is that these people will end up quitting. We see it so very often being a podcast host. We see so many people doing this. So I'm just going to talk about that and dispel a few myths and just kind of get straight talking. You know me, it's what I do. But before I do that, just a quick shout out, of course, to the team at AWeber. Now, AWeber helped me to power my email marketing. Well, why as a podcaster do you need that? Because you have to build your community on land that you own. You can't be just using Facebook groups and Slack and all the stuff that is just in other people's ballparks, all right? You need to own your data and build a quality relationship with every single one of your subscribers and your listeners. And AWeber lets me do that, and they will let you do it too with their simple onboarding tools for podcast listeners. So go and check it out. AWeber is my choice for email marketing. You can go and use that for 30 days free at markasquith.com/AWeber. Right, I honestly don't know if this is going to turn into a rant. I really hope it's not, but honestly, I can't promise. It's like one of those that might just get a bit ranty. So, as a podcast hosting platform, Captivate, I mean, we're actually quite fortunate because we run Podcast Success Academy, we run Podcast Website, we run Captivate.fm. We're very fortunate enough to work with a range of podcasters. You know, we work with thousands and thousands of podcasters, right through from starting their show using the free tools at Podcast Success Academy, right through to their hosting, their analytics, their marketing tools at Captivate.fm, and then eventually when they become more of a brand, they become a bigger brand in the space and they want to create their bigger and better all singing, all dancing website, they tend to move up to Podcast Websites. And, you know, we're very fortunate to see so many people through that cycle. But what's happening is that obviously now everyone's a bloody podcast coach. Literally, I am so tired of seeing new podcast coaches crop up. And I understand why. It's because they start a podcast and they think, well, I can teach people how to podcast. I've seen entrepreneurs these days. Honestly, there are people on Instagram who are online people, online entrepreneurs, and they're teaching personal branding, they're teaching email marketing, they're teaching SEO, they're teaching podcasting, they're teaching YouTube. Like, how can you possibly, they tell people to niche down and be a specialist. How can they be a specialist or even that good at all of these things? The simple fact is they can't. All they're trying to do is get you on an email list, get you to buy something that they're selling so that then they can sell you something else. They can sell you the next email course and so on and so forth. Fine. It's a business model. But the problem is, sorry for coughing. The problem is, I'm not editing it. The problem is that all they do is they do kind of superficial advice. Okay, so what they'll do is they'll tell you to monetize early on. Here's how you get sponsors early on. What they don't tell you is that you're not sponsorable. You are not sponsorable early on because you've not tried anything, you've not tested anything, you've not got the download numbers to warrant a decent-sized sponsorship. Even though I talked about fixed-price sponsorship on the last episode, you're still not sponsorable because you've not proven your points. On that fixed price episode that I did last week, the last episode of this show, go back and listen to it. When I say you can get fixed price sponsorship, I'm talking about when you've proven the fact that you can get engagement and you can consistently get engagement. Okay, that's what that is about. You can't monetize early on if you, one, can't prove your engagement, and two, you've got no one to engage with. All you should be doing in the early days is two things. Number one, building your audience, and number two, putting the mechanisms in place so that you are saleable, so that you are sponsorable, so that you are patronable, so that you're able to get listener support. That's easier. Okay, so what I mean there is, devise your experiments. Figure out, actually, how can I prove engagement very, very quickly? How can I make sure my Patreon's set up so that once I've built the trust, I'm not scrambling around? What I don't want to do is get an email from a listener in 3 months saying, how do I give you money? And you saying, oh, crap, I've not got anywhere where you can give me money. Yes, get your Patreon set up early, but don't think that you're going to start retiring. You know, you ain't going to do that. You ain't going to do that, okay? When a sponsor comes along, you need all the mechanisms in place, but a sponsor won't come along until you can prove some numbers. Now, the numbers don't need to be downloads. They can be engagement numbers, but devise the experiments first. So you can't start a podcast just to monetize it, because that's just not the industry. It's been bastardized a little bit by business people, by people in the online entrepreneurship space, which I get. It's fine. It's amazing for networking. It's amazing for expert positioning. Those things are not in question. But it's been made to look like it's easy to monetize your podcast early on when it isn't. Okay, when it isn't. You better believe that you've got to invest time and money in building your show if you want to generate real revenue through it. And if you can't do that, just accept that. Accept that you're going to be one of the slow and steady podcasters that will consistently build their audience, but that it might just take a little bit longer for you to generate some revenue. Okay, there is nothing wrong with that at all. But be realistic. Don't expect to launch your show today and just generate a pile of money, because sadly that is not the case. I'm really sorry to burst your bubble. That's not to say that you shouldn't put the things in place like I've talked about, but please be realistic. And the reason I'm telling you this is that I don't want your bubble to be burst artificially and early on. I want you to go into podcasting with a realistic outlook on it so that you can understand the beauty and the clarity and the opportunity that comes with being a podcaster, but that, just like everything else, a blog, a YouTube channel, a business, things ain't going to be easy, and you're not going to generate that first million overnight, all right? So you just please be mindful of that. You can do it. I got your back. Everyone else has got your back, but be realistic, all right? That's all I'm asking for today, okay? So thanks for joining me. This, of course, is the Podcast Accelerator. If you found this episode useful, please go ahead and tell your friend. You can share this episode. And if you want to subscribe to the show, please go ahead and check out markasquith.com/listen, which will take you to a page with one-click access to all of your favorite podcast players. So it's very simple, very quick to subscribe. If you're wondering, how do I get my friends to subscribe to it? Send them that link, markasquith.com/listen. They can go ahead and they can just include that link in anything they do, and they can go and subscribe, all right? So until the next time, thank you for joining me. And until the next time, never forget, the more you expect from yourself, the more you will excel.